Alright, time to roll up the old sleeves and lay out all the different branches and twigs of Muppet continuity. But before I talk about the Muppet timeline, I will first use the Godzilla timeline for reference. It's also tangentially related, as Godzilla is also a franchise about puppets, don't at me. With the exception of Shin Godzilla, all the monsters in Godzilla movies are full-body puppets. Same as Big Bird, same as the bear in the Big Blue House. Anyway, the first Godzilla movie came out in 1954, which was followed by about 14 sequels, all canon to one another. This is referred to as the Showa series. Then in 1984 they made Return of Godzilla, which was a direct sequel to the 1954 original, canon only to that first one but not to any of the other Showa series installments. They then went on to make a bunch more sequels to Return of Godzilla, thus establishing a new branch of continuity referred to as the Heisei series. Then in 1999, they kicked off the Millennium series with Godzilla 2000, yet another direct sequel to the 1954 original, not canon to any of the sequels that came in between. They once again followed it up with a bunch of sequels, except this time they were all mostly direct sequels exclusively to the original, with the exception of Godzilla Tokyo SOS, which is a continuation of the one that came before it, Godzilla X Mechagodzilla, which itself is an exclusive sequel to the original. The Millennium timeline ends with 2004's Godzilla Final Wars, which is a celebration of the Showa series and thus is canon to that series, but not the Heisei or Millennium series. Then there's Shin Godzilla, which has no place in the Godzilla continuity tree, but rather orbits it, like a satellite. Point is, the Godzilla timeline is all jacked up and splits off and tangles itself up in all sorts of funky ways. And the continuity of the Muppets is quite similar. And most people have better things to do than to think very deep or hard about something so trivial and inconsequential. But not me, though. The trunk of our Muppet continuity tree is the original Muppet Show that aired in the 1970s. The Muppet movie from 1979 is essentially a prequel to the Muppet Show, depicting how the Muppets all met each other.
Uncle Kermit, is this about how the Muppets really got started?
Well, it's sort of approximately how it happened.
The following movie, The Great Muppet Caper, is our first deviation from established continuity, but there's still some tenuous connection as the story is framed as being something of a performance by the characters from established continuity. It's a flimsy connection, though.
See, in this film, me and Fozzie play crack investigative reporters for the Daily Chronicle. And Gonzo, he's our photographer, and it's gonna be terrific.
The Muppets Take Manhattan opens with the Muppets graduating from college and going to New York to launch a Broadway show, breaking entirely away from the established canon of the Muppet Show and the Muppet movie and taking place in its own original continuity. But we're gonna put a pin in that because it's gonna be relevant again down the line. The Muppets Christmas Carol and Muppets Treasure Island, classics though they may be, take no part in the Muppet continuity timeline, but rather orbit it, just as the twin satellites, Phobos and Deimos, orbit the planet Mars. Speaking of satellites and Mars, Muppets from Space also exists. Moving on. The short-lived and underrated TV series Muppets Tonight is presented as a spin-off of the original Muppet Show, and thus is canon to it. The 2002 feature-length TV Christmas special, A Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie, is likewise canon to the original Muppet Show as it features the Muppet Theater, and establishes its location in New York City. Put a pin in that. The 2011 masterpiece, The Muppets, much like Return of Godzilla and the whole Millennium series, serves as a direct continuation of the original continuity of the Muppet Show and the Muppet Movie, disregarding any nonsense that came in between. This is evident by the fact that it establishes the location of the Muppet Theater in Los Angeles, a direct contradiction to A Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie, having the theater be in New York City. Remember how we put a pin in that? Speaking of the pins we put in things, 2011's The Muppets also establishes canon with The Muppets Take Manhattan, which presents a continuity issue as Muppets Take Manhattan was never a part of the OG canon to begin with. Muppets Most Wanted also exists and is a direct sequel to the one that came before it, much like Godzilla Tokyo SOS is a direct sequel to Godzilla X Mechagodzilla. The 2015 workplace sitcom ABC's The Muppets, underrated and cancelled too soon, claims no connection to the OG continuity, but rather takes place in its own unique continuity. Muppets Now returns to the continuity canon to 2011's The Muppets and Muppets Most Wanted, as evident by the fact that it features Walter, a character who was introduced in those installments. The Muppets Mayhem is a direct continuation of the OG Muppet Show continuity, but not a part of the continuity of 2011's The Muppets, thus establishing yet another branch of continuity. And that pretty much catches us up to where the Muppets franchise is now. Mind you, this doesn't cover everything. I didn't include any Christmas or holiday specials under an hour long, or any of the direct-to-DVD things like Kermit's Swamp Years or Muppets Wizard of Oz.
And they just tear it up. I'm talking kung fu. I'm talking walking on walls.